All right, welcome everybody. Merrill Chandler here, your host of the Get Fundable podcast and your guide to the fundability universe. This fundability podcast continues to level up. In a moment, we're going to do a deep dive into Becky Nova and her Lady Landlords. It's an awesome story about literally stumbling into real estate investing and turning it into a massive win through trial, tribulation, failing, and making it happen. So when we come back, we'll meet Becky Nova.
In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Welcome, 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 everybody. It may be morning, it may be afternoon, it may be the evening for you. You might be on a treadmill, you might be in your car. For all I know, you could be wandering around in the middle of the dark. My name is Merrill Chandler. Welcome to the Fundability Podcast. And today we have Becky Nova with us with Lady Landlords. Now, I'm excited about this because as I was in our kind of our pregame conversation with Becky, that so many of you are already landlords. And so many of you are already women. So there's a big synchronicity about her success and what she's come to as a result. So I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself. But as you guys know what's coming up. Becky doesn't. So we want to find out how she got here. Becky, welcome to the Fundability Podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on today. I'm glad we got this scheduled.
Absolutely. Okay. So give us that Reader's Digest condensed version of where you've ended up and why my team fell in love with you when they were looking for great guests to be here. Why you? What makes you special? And that everybody should literally stop on the treadmill and be like, what? Becky Nova? I can't be distracted by running.
Sure. I feel like one of the reasons that people are attracted to what I've been able to build over the past couple of years is because I am not special. I am not different from anybody else out there. I had my 9-to-5 job. I fell in love with real estate. I went for it. I started buying properties. And then now a couple of years later, here I am helping other women on their journey to financial freedom through real estate as well.
Well, I saw what you did there. Yeah, you didn't get that point. I saw what you did there. All right, so give us and so this isn't a reporting of how you got here, right? Mm-hmm. This is share with us your experience of, because you used to be a cancer researcher, for heaven's sake, right? So
I still am.
There we go. Cancer researcher by day and real estate investor by night. So what was it that all of a sudden a wealth strategy popped up? Did you consider other wealth strategies, or were you always in love with real estate?
No, I fell into real estate. I had no intention of ever getting involved in this. To me, cancer research was just a way for me to be able to pay to travel. I have lived in multiple countries. I used to live in Europe for a really long time, where I used to run a business there. It ended up being a total disaster. I moved back to the States. I went back to cancer research. My plan was come back, make more money, and then figure out kind of how to move next. But no, I had horrible financial literacy. I was in debt when I decided to start buying real estate. I had horrible credit. And I always tell people that I hate telling people about my success in real estate, because I always have to admit that my husband was right.
We never want to say that. We don't say that out loud, people. She didn't say that. You didn't hear that.
No.
So what was he right about? What aha did you end up having through this process?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, back in 2017, 2018, my husband kind of came to me. Now, my husband is an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. moved to the States about 10 years ago, very much that American dream, white picket fence. That's what he wanted. So at the time, back in 2017, I just moved back from Europe. I was running my own business. And when you run your own business, you're putting every single penny back into that business. I was broke. I was in horrible debt because I was just trying to get this off the ground. But as we do in relationships, we have to compromise and we have to figure out how to sometimes make the other person happy. So he wanted to buy that house.
Hold on. What did you just say? We have to actually every once in a while, not the majority of the time, guys, not the majority of the time. Sometimes you actually have to make your partner happy. All right.
This was his life goal that was really, really important to him. So I said, fine, let's see what we can do. So then I said, okay, let's figure out how to get myself out of debt, figure out how to improve my credit. Let's figure out how to buy this house. The more I learned, the more I realized I still did not want to buy a house. The reason was because I didn't want to be living mortgage payment to mortgage payment. That sounded horrible to me. After I went through all this work to now improve my finances, I didn't want to just be completely broke and just be, what do they call that, house poor.
Yeah, house poor. And to add to that, you've already been traveling by this point. You know what a sense of freedom feels like. You already know that. When we were mortgaged, the root word for mortgage is engaged until death, mort for death. So 30 years, yes. Engaged until death. I don't want to be engaged until death, right? So it sounds like where you're coming from.
And I was talking to like my other friends that were already married and bought their forever homes. And I'm like, you live in this, you are like 30 and you bought the house you plan on dying in. Not going to work for me. Did not enjoy that idea. Then all they would do is tell me about all they did was just go to Home Depot on the weekends, or they were like saving their money to fix their like grass. And I was like, this does not sound like appealing or fun at all. So I went to my husband and I said, listen, okay, I hear what you want. Once again, we went back to that compromise. And I said, I hear what you want. I know that we want to get you a house, but we got to do it a little bit differently. We can't just buy a single family home and live in it and just pay mortgage to mortgage. I was like, I think we need to buy a multifamily. And I tell everybody, I came up with this fantastic idea. You buy a multifamily, you live in one side, you rent out the other. I had no idea that anybody else was doing this.
You're like, I have a revolutionary idea.
Correct. I thought I was smarter than everybody else because I still was not even learning or educating myself about real estate investing at that time. Mm-hmm. I was just breaking the barrier into financial literacy. Real estate investing was so not even on that scope. But I got him on board with buying a multifamily.
Nice.
And that all of a sudden was what opened my eyes to the possibility of what real estate investing can do for someone.
See, I have to share. This is where your and my paths diverge because as my family, my tribe knows that my first foray into real estate investing was a duet. It was like a townhome. Mm-hmm. And so I lived in one side and then I rehabbed the other side and rented it out. Right. And then I discovered that one day at 8:30 at night, they invited me over to I had to go to the store to get a light for the oven. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I hate my life. Why am I changing out light bulbs? Now, people say, property manager or whatever, but I'm living next door, right? So I never went back. Apparently you went all in. So tell us, so this opened the door, but what was on the other side of the door?
At first, I had no idea. No idea whatsoever. It was literally at the closing for that first property. And that first closing was a disaster, an absolute disaster. Usually when I tell people the story of what actually happened at our closing, they're like, why would you ever do this again? The closing was a disaster. It was, so normally a closing, you schedule hour, maybe 2 hours to be able to go in. You just sign a whole bunch of documents that nobody ever reads and you walk out with a bunch of keys. Well, we were there for about 4.5 hours and I can guarantee you there was probably no other closing that has had that much cursing and infighting take place.
We are from New York after all.
Yes. But there were just so many different things that had been missed. so many different things on paperwork that were incorrect, numbers that were wrong, names that were wrong. It was an app. Like the fact that we actually closed that same day, I'm kind of shocked. We then get out of there. The problems from the closing now actually continue. So it was like a month of just leaks in properties, the seller not now following through with what they were supposed to do, problems with their attorney. We actually ended up suing our attorney from that closing.
Own attorney.
We sued our own attorney from that closing. But regardless of how horrible that was, it was actually at that closing that I had said, oh my God, I want to do this again. And
Eureka! Do it again.
I was like, I'm doing this again. And my mortgage broker, my realtor were like, you're nuts. Like you can't do that. Like, one, this is horrible as it is, Becky. Why are we doing this again? You already have like your hands filled. And I was like, no. I'm like, I'm going to get through these problems. We're going to figure that out. And then I'm buying more property. And they were just like, it's going to take you forever. You got to figure out how to save. You know, you just bought this house. It's going to be really hard, especially in New York. And I was like, nah, I'm going to solve this and I'm going to figure it out. And it was after that I went on this educational place of really learning about real estate investing. But it was not until after that first property.
After the close.
Then I'm like listening to a podcast and they're like, yeah, so this great strategy of house hacking. And I'm like, oh, I guess I was not as original as I thought.
So your realtor and your mortgage broker is literally like, you drop the knife and back away. Just back away or you're going to hurt yourself. What happened after that?
I called them about every week being like, can I buy another house now? Can I buy another house now? Can I buy another house now? It worked out really well because they really became two people that were they always talk about kind of building a team when you invest in real estate, kind of having trusted people you can call. And they were really mine. And even though for the first, 40 weeks, the answer was no, you can't. It was every week I got to learn something different and ask them questions about things. So as I started to either read books about real estate investing or go to networking events about real estate investing, listen to podcasts about real estate investing, I was then able to talk to them and ask questions about, is this really how it works? Is this really something that can be done? Can I really make this work? So it was a great way to take a lot of that education and see if I can put that into practice. So that really became... We closed on that first property May 22nd, 2018. And that entire summer was me just calling the two of them every single week, listening to podcasts and just learning all of these different strategies.
While, by the way, you're receiving rent checks from your multi units that are covering some mass majority of your mortgage, right?
Well, now I'm living for free in New York. Not a lot of New Yorkers can say that.
Absolutely. All right. So what would you say then is one or two of the most influential experts or people that you have, the books you read, podcasts? What was it that infused you with knowledge, or at least to know how to ask your team the right questions?
For me, actually, my favorite book, which is not even so real estate investing related, is actually Start With Why by Simon Sinek, because I feel like it's just so applicable to everything you do in life.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned, I've owned businesses before, and honestly, I've owned businesses that have made great money, and I've owned businesses that I've lost a ton of money. And when you kind of go through those ups and downs and no one cares about the days that are great, right? The days that are great, you don't think about anything else. It's just, hey, this is fantastic. This is fun. This is really cool that I get to run my own business. But on those days that things just suck and nothing go your own way and you lose money or whatever happens, which honestly is pretty much every day for an entrepreneur at some point, in some point in your day, it really does kind of come back to that start with why concept of really saying, why is this important? What kind of got me here? And it really helps you get through those down times.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. Thank you for bringing that up, because even in our own master course and the bootcamp series that we have, we talk about your why being your motivation, your purpose, what's driving you, right? And then we have a section that we call your wow is after your why. So what's on the other side of your why, and what are you driving towards, right? And so what was it? So in that, what was your chief motivation? Is it more, better, faster? Or what was your why?
For me, it's time freedom. That is the most important thing. Honestly, it's not necessarily the number in a bank account. It is literally, we have limited amount of time on this earth. I want to make sure that I am not wasting any minute, any second of what that time is doing something that I don't want to do. Right. So it was really important for me to be able to say, what is it that I want to do with my day today? And actually focus on saying yes to those things and no to the things that I don't.
So, at least some version of European freedom, right? Other than the Eastern Asia freedom and your South Pacific freedom, right? So, absolutely, the time is the great delimiter. So what then? What would you say then if you were in front of my group? Oh, that's right, you are. If you're in front of my group teaching them, what would you say is the top 3 ways that you have learned and implemented and been successful? And I believe in failing forward, so those are included. But what would you say are the top 3 strategies, ideas, thoughts, procedures that you do personally in your personal professional life that keep you on point so that you can continue to take advantage of your time?
Sure. Probably the hardest one for me, and something I still struggle with, so we're going to call it still a practice, is remembering that that no is a full sentence. Right? We get asked all the time to do things that we really don't want to do. I think there's like a Jerry Seinfeld skit about that, like back in like the 90s, right? Because like we end up being asked to do things, then we get really upset that we actually agreed to it, and then we're like, oh, why did we do that? So I think really being able to say no to things that just don't light you up is really important. That to me is very, very important. And that's something that I still practice with. 2, you need to keep whatever that goal is or the thing that is your why in front of you. You can see what's behind me, but what you can't see is what's in front of me. And that is a ton of sticky notes, sticky notes, vision board, all of that type of thing is what's in front of me that I can focus on to remember and remind me why I am doing these things.
Do you have a spiritual practice, a morning practice, rituals that you abide by to remind you and anchor in these ideas? We'll get to 3 in a moment, but you're already here. So what is it how do you anchor these in your daily practice, your daily life?
Sure. I'm a very big believer in time blocking, where I have certain times, and that is exactly what I focus on. I used to be very much that multitasker, the person that just thought they can kind of conquer everything at the same time. And then I realized I kind of wasn't getting as much as I really actually thought. And also that there were really not as many things that I actually needed to accomplish as I thought I did. Right.
You need to pass that one along to me because my to-do list is 3 pages long. So
I'm going to tell you a funny place of where I kind of got that from. And that was somebody had suggested that I read the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And
read it.
I'll be honest, I did not. Want to know why? Because that book is so long. Can't you give me the abridged version about how I can save all my time?
4-hour read of this.
I was not. I'm sorry, but I was not a fan. But the one thing that I really kind of got from that was really prioritize with what actually has to get done, not the things that we necessarily would like to get done or could get done, but what actually has to happen today. Do those. That's what goes on my time block. Anything else? Great. Yes, I absolutely have that, 3-page to-do list too. But the focus of where I'm actually putting my time and where I can then feel that sense of accomplishment is then going to be much shorter. That was something I remember learning when I was younger, was that, if you end up setting a goal and you keep not meeting it, it's really not a good goal. It makes you feel crappy, right? You get really upset that you didn't actually make it. And then all you're doing is then kind of pouting around that you didn't actually meet your goal. So the idea of goals is to actually set something that's attainable, something we can actually get to. And why is that? Because it gives you that sense of accomplishment. And now you're like, you know what?
Yeah.
Now I can keep going. Right.
If I don't get the endorphins, what is it? Avoid pain and seek pleasure. So if I'm not getting the endorphins, I'm only sitting here in pain. So very wise, very wise. All right.
Most of us are our own worst enemies.
Yeah. All right. So what's number 3, right? So you have your first 2. What is number 3?
Staying connected. I think it's really important to network with other people that have similar goals, that are working on similar projects, that will kind of keep me in the loop of what I'm trying to work on, right? We are human. We like to be with other people. We like to have those connections. We are not meant, as much as I want to go live on my island, we are not meant to live on islands by ourselves. We really are people that like to be in communities. So I think it is really important to find find your group, find your people that are also working on similar things to that. You can continue to inspire and motivate each other.
Okay, so let's say that do you have a tribe now? Given that you are the lady landlord headmistress of the lady landlords,
I
what
like
is
that.
it?
I might use that.
On your car, it's just like headmistress of the lady landlords. So what is it how do you inspire your crew? We'll get to how my crew can get to know you better, or know what how you are doing it, and how you can assist them in hitting their goals. But what are the main principles of your organization or your tribe? What is the operating the SOP, standard operating procedure, for being a lady landlord?
Sure. So something that I felt was lacking when I now started to own properties was that there were all these questions and all these decisions you have to make as a landlord that nobody tells you about when you buy property, right? It seems so easy. You buy a property, you give them a lease, they pay you money on the first, right? But nobody kind of talks about once again, light bulbs are out. Who's supposed to be fixing that? Whose responsibility? Who's paying? I tell people I've gotten into this debate before with other people, especially people that are not in New York. And they'll say, but why do you have to change light bulbs? That's in their house. And I'm like, I rent apartments. People that live in 700 square foot boxes don't carry around ladders. How are they going to change their light bulb? Right? That's just not a normal thing that you would have. It's incredibly typical in New York that a landlord would be the person that's responsible for that. So there's all those little uncomfortable, awkward decisions that we have to make as business owners within landlording. And I realized that I had nobody to talk to about those things. I did not have my own tribe with that. So as a friend of mine kind of always makes fun of me for, he kind of always says, if you just can't find what you need, you just seem to create it yourself. So that's actually really the basis. That's my SOP for being a lady landlord, is you figure it out and you make somebody else's journey just that much easier by sharing your own experience. That is what we are all about. Uplifting the next one to then say, hey, you know what? Yeah, actually in your situation, go grab that ladder. You're going to be changing those light bulbs.
Go change the damn light bulb.
Correct.
Brilliant. So tell us about Lady Landlords and how you formed this group, formed this movement. May I? And tell us what it is that people could count on if they were part of your group.
Sure. So it really started at the very beginning of the pandemic. Actually, I guess I'll have to thank my husband for this too. Here in New York, mid-March 2020. This one I'm more okay with though. So mid-March, my husband unfortunately was one of the people that was out of work due to COVID at that time. He comes home and he's like, babe, I got bad news. Work's shut down. My response was, oh my God, we have to go buy another property. He was like, no, I lost my job. And I was like, I know, we need another rental property. He just kind of walked away from me, closed the bedroom door, and that's pretty much I heard. I'm sitting there being like, no, like that's the right decision. We need to bring in extra income. We need more cash flow coming in. So I said, okay, well, I'm no longer allowed to be out in public here due to COVID. So let's go make some friends on the internet. So I started a Facebook group called Lady Landlords. I literally thought it would be me and my mommy hanging out in there.
A glass of wine at 4:30 p.m. Yeah.
Yep. But instead, all of a sudden, we just had other women that were in similar situations that were finding me saying, yeah, I want to talk about real estate. I don't necessarily have somebody in my life. Yep. I have all these questions and I need help kind of running my business. And that is really what started the group. We now have over 1,000 women join the group on a monthly basis, which is fantastic.
They join at a rate of 1,000 a month.
Those are the people I accept, not even the people I don't accept. But
back off, people, get in line.
But it really, the whole purpose of the goal is to really be able to have other women that have kind of been there, done that, help you. Like I said, and it doesn't matter if you are new starting out. There's always a piece of information or some type of insight that you have that can help somebody else. Even if themselves are a newbie, everybody is in a different place and everybody has some way that they can really contribute and make another woman's journey just that much easier. And that's what we do. We just pass along information to help each other all day long.
Brilliant.
24/7.
20, I'm literally, it's 11:35 and I'm still cranking out here on Facebook. All right. So tell my crew if they wanted to get in the line, because by the way, guys, you get to be moved to the front of the line. Just kidding. How would they come in? How would they be able to become part of your organization, and get this kind of support? Because we have so many people who get funding or they work with us and they're like, Meryl, what do I do with this money? And I'm like, hey, I'm not a real estate investor. I hate real estate investing, but I love real estate investors.
Mhm.
So what is it that, how can they get to know you, and how can they come in contact with this awesome support group?
Sure. So those that identify as female can go to Facebook and just type in Lady Landlords and you will find us nice and easily there. For everybody else, you can just find me on Instagram at Becky Nova 24. Very simple.
Becky Nova 24. All right, very good. Do you have any final words of wisdom for my crew? You've been absolutely wonderful. What would you tell somebody who is now full-time, who wants time freedom? How do they reach and acquire, grab, take down like a gazelle in the Serengeti their dream?
Sure. So I hope this doesn't get us in trouble for any type of copyright infringement here, but I'm going to steal Nike's slogan and say, just do it. Go for it. I talk to investors all day long that get exactly that swoosh. I talk to investors all day long that are just so, once again, we're our own worst enemies. We get stuck in this analysis paralysis, such a term that's always associated with real estate investing. And listen, nothing's ever going to be perfect. I just told you about how horrible my first closing was, right? But I got in the game. I made the decisions and I actually took action. And that is really what separates those that are going to be able to get to that financial freedom, those that are going to really get that time freedom, versus those that are going to be sitting there for the next 30 years in their 9-to-5 job, wishing that they'd actually taken action. So listen, it's not going to be perfect. The first time's not going to be perfect. The second time's not going to be perfect. Never is it going to be perfect. So you know what? It's better to get involved today than it is tomorrow.
Brilliant. Becky, thank you so much for joining me and inspiring my crew with tales of woe that turn into amazing opportunities, because that's what it's all about. That's why I said a moment ago, failing forward. We have a part of our culture is that the more times you fail, the closer you get to the win, right? It's just, how do we mitigate big losses while we fail? How do we fail quickly and move fast through it
and learn?
So, yeah, and learn. So thank you so much for being here and for weighing in and teaching my crew, especially how to start from that old W-2 and move into where people are joining your crew in droves by the thousands. So thank you so much, Becky, for being with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Meryl would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Meryl's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast, because we want them to get fundable too.